My name is Eve Mutio.
My name is Mongara Mutiga.
I am Fred Ogola.
My name is Wahiga Kemuturi, a co-founder and CEO of Let's Create Africa.
I'm an entrepreneur and a businessman.
I'm a professor of strategy and decision making, academic director, Strathmore Business School.
And I'm currently serving as a non-executive director in Infinite and People and Culture Solutions.
According to research, 49% of executives, especially top-level executives, and that's the C-suite, say that they've had a mental health breakdown.
As executives go up through the ladder, they encounter a lot of work pressure, they increase their span of control, and throughout my training, where I've trained 1 million executives plus, I've discovered that as the job pressure span of control goes up, these executives need to expand their mental health.
Sometimes last year, 2021, I almost suffered a nervous breakdown. And I realized as an executive, the way we stomach a lot of things, and we think we are okay, and we are not okay.
It's very hard for you to retain your identity as an individual when there are so many people looking up to you, making demands of you.
Why not have something that we can convene all the executives, because they are the one who take care of organization, who's taking care of them.
I will be joining all of you on 31st March for the Mental Health for Executives Forum.
And I will be the host.
From 6 p.m. to 8 p.m.
6 to 8 p.m.
From 6 p.m. to 8 p.m.
From 6 to 8 p.m.
See you there.
It doesn't have to be lonely at the top.
Thank you everybody for joining us at this session. We are looking forward to see how it goes for all of you. We are also looking to have very interesting conversations around mental health for executives. And before further ado, I would just like to tell all of you, please welcome. My name is Wahiga Muturi, and I'll be your host for this evening.
My name is Eve Mutio, and I am an ambassador of mental health, especially at the executive.
Eve is a strategic and innovative HR executive offering over 12 years of progressive experience in diverse industries, including manufacturing, hospitality, donor-funded organizations, and she translates business vision into HR initiatives that improve performance, profitability, growth, and employee engagement.
And Wahiga is passionate about eradicating poverty in Africa using African solutions. Wahiga is a media enthusiast. He has over 13 years of experience and also is passionate about social entrepreneurship. And more to that, he's also one of the board of directors in Infinite People and Culture Solutions and is the co-founder of Let's Create Africa.
How exactly do you express vulnerability?
Okay, actually I'll borrow a word from Renee Brown. She describes that vulnerability equals courage, because to be vulnerable means you're willing to accept what you are not able to do. And it's very easy to mask, to hide behind a lot of smoke screens, like professor says, but it takes vulnerability to be able to come out and say that you are having a problem, or as one question has mentioned, to be able to ask for help. It's interesting, especially what Dr. Eric mentioned about stigma and the examples he used of things like HIV before. The only way that the stigma for this particular ailment was removed was people having the courage to come out and say, it's here with us. I think that is the biggest thing. So for us as executives, I think the one thing is to be able to lead from the front and not to expect that the people behind us or the people who report to us are the only ones that are allowed to be vulnerable. So I think as a leader, you actually have to start as yourself, be able to look internally and say that I'm able to ask for help. And I'd like to give an example of myself, and I'm actually glad that my doctor is, I'm seeing she's on the panel, on the call. Professor, you mentioned something about the growth at the top, that usually we prepare ourselves for the challenges, the big decisions you have to make. You have to prepare yourselves for the stakeholder management you have to make. But there is rarely, or actually almost no, preparation in terms of how you're going to handle the stress at the top. And usually what happens is that when you get there, you find yourself in a new environment where you have no coping mechanisms. So as an executive, and like I said, one of the thing you can do at that point is two things. You can either be in denial and say, soldier on. And then what eventually happens is that you create a toxic work culture. I am sure most people can relate to having bosses who are insufferable. But the whole point of it is not that they're insufferable, they're just dysregulated. They are not able to handle the stress. And so the easiest way to do it is to dismantle it, to put it against everyone else. And here's my example. When I got the job as a country managing director, I did a lot of background checks. I got a coach, I got mentors, because I thought those were the most important things, that those are the challenges that I was going to face. But one of the things that was not clear at that time, but later on became very evident, is that it comes in with the rise at the executive level, there's a lot of anxiety. So that became, actually, was a challenge that I had. And I want to say, luckily for me, I had the good fortune to not take myself too seriously and to seek help. And I think that is one of the best decisions I've ever made. So when it comes to vulnerability, I'd say it's a requirement. It's actually not a nice to have, it's a requirement for any leader. Because if you're not vulnerable, it means you're not willing to accept what you're not capable of doing. And in so doing, you're not able to learn. Thank you, Ada.
I would like to actually throw a question to you in regard also to what Mashari has taken. How can HR, as a department, assist the executive to actually be aware of not only their mental health, but also put policies in place for the company?
Let me start by saying it's all about awareness. For a very long time, we have seen mental health not being taken as health. So people will have health covers, health insurances, and that does not include mental health. So we have to start by even educating the HR person to know that mental health is health. The brain is an organ that also can fall sick and needs to be treated. And if people fall sick, we should not discriminate them. So from the HR perspective, if the HR or the CEO is not fully informed or fully aware about the mental health, then even when employees come and say, I am suffering from the following, there's a chance that that particular employee can actually face very negative repercussions, including being told, are we safe with so-and-so in the office? Can we allow her to actually send an email on behalf of the organization? So people are discriminated. And because of this, when people have mental cases or feel like they have all that, they feel like if I come and talk about this, I might even be fired. So it starts with that awareness. And now that we're talking to the CEOs, I would like to say the same way we partner with the HR departments to talk about performance management at the C-suite level, can we talk about mental health? So this is not just about the CEO, but it's about changing our culture as organizations and how we see the health of our workforce. When it comes to health, health doesn't know titles, health doesn't know hierarchy. So it could be the CEO, it could be the cleaner, but all of us at the end of the day, we are human beings at the core, and if you have an issue, it's an issue, and all of us will be vulnerable. So HR has in the past put employee assistance programs where when people are sick, they can actually call a number to be assisted. But I have worked for 5 organizations. I consult a lot for different organizations, and I can tell you that is always at the back. It is not part of the priorities of what you deal with as an organization. And therefore, my call to the CEOs to be, and for those who have long day today, if you're HR, if you're a CEO, or if you're someone of influence, let us normalize having these discussions at the C-suite level. As we do our HR, as we do our organizational strategies, not even HR strategies, let us take the workplace wellness very seriously, knowing that health, be it cancer, be it HIV, be it mental health, be it anxiety, be it depression, it doesn't know that you're a CEO. It doesn't know that you're a cleaner. You're just a human being to them. And therefore, even the CEO that is going through that feeling or feel like they're overwhelmed, they're just a human being. The rest are just titles that we wear as I call them masks. So I'm working with a mask for HR director, but at the end of the day, I am just Jane, a human being, a lady like any other person. And I'm vulnerable to like any other person. So let us make it a priority, just like we make performance management, separation with the employees, disciplinary issues, all those things. Back to you here.
I think one of the things we need to clarify today is that as we talk about mental health and leaders, in my mind, we are engaging you on 2 levels. One is because you are a human being and you are likely to suffer some of these issues in the course of your lifetime. And number two, because of the people that you lead. Because I have found that the mental health of the leader in an organization many times has repercussions or has implications for the people with whom he is serving, he or she is serving. So when we talk about mental health and leaders, we find that there is a tendency for the leaders to shift and focus more on the mental health of the people who are under them. But we are shifting that conversation. And I am saying that my first priority today is to discuss mental health amongst the leaders themselves. One of the most interesting questions, Eve, is has there been evidence that leaders do suffer from mental health issues? Indeed, in the world, this is quite clear. We have evidence and data from the United States showing that up to 1974, 49% of the sitting presidents had demonstrated a mental health issue, including Abraham Lincoln. We know about Winston Churchill, who was the Prime Minister of Britain and was very instrumental in the World War, and we know that he struggled with bipolar mood disorder. So there is a lot of evidence that leaders do tend to undergo mental. That is not in question. You've asked me a very personal question. Even I'll delve into that a little bit. That when I see leaders in my office, most of the times, previously, you would find that they are there very reluctantly. That they had never thought they would be in that circumstance. And most of the times when I see leaders, I'm sorry to say, they have been pushed to the edge. Their lives are coming apart and a lot of things have happened. Now, in mental health, and I know Maureen will comment on this, we believe in early diagnosis and treatment. That if we diagnose depression early, then the outcomes tend to be much, much better. So the unique thing I found about leaders, and I know many of them are with us this evening, Eve, is that they tend to come a little bit late into the problem. Many times they have already adopted what we call maladaptive coping mechanisms. The biggest one that we are seeing among the leaders is alcohol and substance use. And that's a key one. The thing about maladaptive coping mechanisms is that they work in the short term. So you find a lot of leaders are hooked onto substance and especially alcohol, and especially during this COVID-19. So by the time we are getting an opportunity to assess them and to interact with them, a lot has happened. Families have broken, the career is on the line, and by the time we are trying to address these issues, a lot of consequences have already come. However, it's not all doom and gloom. I am seeing a new pattern in the new younger leaders that are coming up in the workspace, and a lot of them are very proactive. A lot of them are coming early and they are open. One of the things I have seen in organizations where the leaders are open to say that they are coming for therapy and they are benefiting, then everybody else tends to follow, and they begin to build a culture where mental health is acceptable. So I have had the opportunity to see leaders in this country in various aspects of business, very vulnerable, opening up themselves and talking about childhood experiences. And at this point, Eve, I'd like to point out that most leaders, because of their rise to the top, they do not have the opportunity to deal with their unresolved past wounds. And I know Maureen will touch a little bit on this, and she, I think, talked about it earlier, that even if you're a CEO or at whatever level you are, if you have unresolved past wounds that nobody ever addressed in childhood, then these things are likely to manifest much later in life. So you asked me a very loaded question, but I'd just like to let you know that leaders go through mental health. They go through them privately. It's worse for them because they come much later in the illness, but we do what we can at the point at which we get them.
Okay, I was going to say that there can be no physical wellness without mental wellness, right? So there's a connection between the mind and the body. But what I have seen is that people will go to great lengths to take care of their bodies. So you go for regular checkups with your doctor, you go and see your dentist to check your teeth, you do the same for your eyesight, and then you exercise, you eat well, you hydrate, but then nobody thinks to see a therapist unless something has gone wrong and there's a crisis, right? So you stay still, you're like, I don't have problems. And we have been taught that people only go for therapy if they have a problem or a crisis. So by the time you're coming to therapy or to see Dr. Juguna, for example, it's because the problem is far gone and it has started manifesting in different facets of your life. For example, now your body has joined in because you're starting to feel a bit incapacitated because of depression, or your family is unraveling because there's some issues you're not handling. I would say there are preventive measures, of course, before you have a crisis. When life is still going okay, make it a point to seek therapy as a tool of personal growth and development, and as a way to learn better coping skills or better habits for yourself, right? So if you have been coming to therapy, for example, and you are going through you're exploring your childhood, you may discover you had issues that you had no clue you had. So you start working on those such that by the time you're getting to, for example, romantic relationships and marriage, you've become better able to navigate communication, navigate conflict resolution. You're learning how to figure out different interests that you have. Uh, and by the time a crisis hits you, you have better coping skills because it's easier to learn them during therapy before you have a rough time. Because by the time you have a rough time, there's so many other things catching on. There are a lot of things to unravel. That might not be the best time to learn new skills. But if you have been learning new skills, coping techniques, becoming good at using them during a crisis is easier. So yes, there are preventive measures, group therapy, joining other support groups for common things, grief, substance abuse, alcohol, alcohol anonymous. There are many other, therapy tools and places you can go to learn how to be better at coping before you actually have a crisis.
I would like to go to Jane. Jane, I know we are talking about mental health for executives, and it's about the workplace. I know we are talking about that. But Moire has deluded to the fact that individuals need to think about their relationships, their lifestyle, the things that surround them, even before they think about performing at a high level at work. How does that work for people in your position? And by people in your position, I mean the HR department, the HR professionals. Is that something you advise? Is it even necessary? Do you think my external life should also reflect in the office or vice versa? Kindly take us through that if you don't mind.
Thank you, Wahiga. I think Maureen is very right about that because I keep hearing people saying, live your private life outside the door. But I'm only one Jane. I cannot be two Janes where I'm leaving one Jane outside the door and another one that comes to work. I am just one human being. I am the same Jane who will come sit as become your HR. I'm the same Jane who will go home and all that. So for me, so I was saying I'm the same Jane. So I've had people saying that, handle your private life, leave this outside the doors. You come to the office. Don't bring your shenanigans here. But really, that is not a reasonable request. HR people and even the CEOs and any manager who takes care of other people needs to understand behavioral studies. Like you are able to sell and see today Wahiga is not himself. He's not himself not because of what is happening at work, but because of something that could be happening outside the workspace. So we have to know that we are just one person. The guy who works for you is the guy that goes home, the guy that has ABCD. And when one part is not whole, it destabilizes everything else. It's just like the way we have a car. If the oil is leaking, you won't move that car. So it's the same thing. It's the same thing. We have to start seeing people wholesomely and knowing that there's no Jane the employee and Jane the wife and Jane the mother and ABCD. If one part of my life is not working, it will be reflected at work. And sometimes we have people who have been very good performers and you see them dripping. And sometimes because of lack of this awareness of how we see people in terms of their behavior and mental wellness, such people are even called for disciplinary as a first measure. Sometimes from HR, sometimes from the CEO, sometimes from the board, and we are told if you don't perform, if you don't hit the numbers, we have given you an PIP. And nobody tries to understand this person is a good performer. What is happening? What is happening? So, and it's because of lack of awareness. Nobody cares about how you manage. People say, you know what, manage your issues, be strong. This is not for weaklings. So we are being told if you can't handle your mental health, if you can't handle stress, you're weak. And that is the narrative that I'm hoping these conversations are going to change for us to know when you're sick, you need a doctor. It doesn't matter which organ. If it is your brain, if it is your mental wellness, it is not okay, and people should support you to actually get help with that.
Moire, let me get back to you. What, if you have any, what are the statistics around mental health for executives, and especially in tune with their past experiences, be it childhood or work? How does it affect their performance? How does it affect how they relate with colleagues? How does it also affect how they relate with external work? And that could be partners and the likes.
I cannot say that I have statistics on executives as a whole. I do know though that we before COVID-19 struck, the statistics were that at least one in four people at the workplace were suffering some form of mental health illness. And then post-COVID, it's actually 4 to 5 out of every 6 people realized that they were suffering some form of mental illness. So assuming executives are part of that, then the number is quite high. For one, lack of motivation, and I did see someone ask a question there. How do you distinguish between lack of motivation and a mental health problem? Sometimes the line is quite thin. We can tell the difference because, I mean, demoralization could also be an aspect of depression. Sometimes languishing, when you're not quite depressed, but you're also not thriving. You're just in the middle there, feeling what most Kenyans would call feeling meh, or just there. It's called languishing. It has a term. It's called languishing. And languishing also, it is a thing that affects our mental wellness and our performance because you feel stuck. You're not moving up, but you can't quite be demoted yet. You don't know where you want to go. You don't know if you want to change your career. You are feeling like you don't want to get out of bed each morning, or you want to be isolated. You don't want to talk to your colleagues. You're being short with your colleagues. You probably gain the reputation of being the person who snaps at colleagues, or the person you're getting a reputation for coming home quite late. I mean, coming to work quite late, or staying at work quite late and then being late the next morning. Performance, drawing a line between performance and mental health becomes quite difficult because you cannot tell when people are demoralized or when they're just having mental health problems. But sometimes it's often the same thing. So yes, also absenteeism from work falls under that. Lack of retention of employees will fall under that. So yes, there is a big correlation, and it does affect work performance in many ways.
I want to pick up on Dr. Fred he has helped organizations to develop several strategies. Moving forward, how would you advise executives, or rather, we have the C-suite here, what is the direction you'd actually advise them when they are developing organization strategy to align with mental health for their employees? Dr. Fred?
When you are working on the work capacity of people, we usually plan for workload in an organization. And I think that we know very well there is a bottleneck as to how much people can be put under pressure to deliver. So sometimes organizations must have a plan on who will be on, who will be off. When can someone take a break? The HR should be able to say, you have to take a break. And when somebody is dealing with an issue, for example, somebody has lost a mother, somebody has just lost a father, and of course they are required to deliver. Of course, their performance may not be very high, they not be very pleasant. So I believe that in strategy, the most important thing that people need to know is let people do the job they are good at, the job they are qualified to do, where they have the skills, knowledge. If you are given a job that you are not qualified to do, you can be given a very high salary that may give you some mental challenges because you are not doing what you do. Can you imagine if you pay me 2 million per month or even 10 million per month, then you put me in a cockpit to fly a plane? I'll be stressed up. It will be a source of a stressor, and it may actually end up being giving me a mental breakdown. If you move me to marketing with very good packages and offers, and I'm a technical person, so I'm saying that you should plan your workforce in a way that there is proper job placement, where there's a job fit, organizational fit. You may not hire somebody because they don't fit in the organization, because if they come to an organization where they don't fit, they get stressed up, they go beyond pressure, and that can bring a mental breakdown. At the same time, sometimes when people work in an environment whereby the top level executives do not have proper underbelly, meaning that those who report to them are so ineffective, are so inefficient, then you find that top level management tend to have stressors. And because they tend to have stressors, that affects their mental health. So I'm saying that if you remember that from top, middle, lower level executives are well aligned and people are where they need to do their work. Note that there are some big bosses there are shouting targets, while at the middle here there are executives struggling to meet those targets, and below them they are having a team that is completely ineffective and inefficient, that cannot leave a job. Then that should be not very good work planning. So we start by ensuring that you have the right organizational capabilities in the teams that we have before we start giving tasks and then aligning what they can achieve with what we have capacities inside. Of course, we have to give them support structures. That's why we have to do monthly review, we have to do quarterly reviews to see whether there is a skill match. And of course, there's always tools. We have skill match survey, always being carried by FK, Federation of Kenyan Employers. They carry out what it calls job skills skill match survey to see how people match or mismatch the jobs where they are, which can sometimes be source of stressors. For example, I'm a professor in Strathmore. We use case method. If you don't know how to teach using a case, and you're being scored on how to teach with a case, you'll be stressed up in spite of the prestigious position you get. So I believe that's how you can go around it.
The same way you would not expect someone with a broken limb to stay in the house is the same way you should not expect someone with a mental health issue to not seek help. So I think those are the comments that I would give. And thank you so much for that.
Your health is your greatest asset. And especially, actually, all health, regardless whether it's mental or elsewhere, your health is your greatest asset. And even for the workforce that we regard as as the CEO, as HR people, as organizations, your health is all you got. It doesn't matter what else you have. If you lose your health, you lose everything most of the time. So let us take health very seriously. For us as individuals, if you're a CEO, take your health very seriously. And that's why, even if you're not feeling stressed, take time to just go and have your own way of calming your brain. Have your own way, even though you're not feeling sick, even though you're not feeling like you have depression, like you have anxiety, like you have any of those things that people describe when they talk about mental health. Have it in your schedule as part of taking care of yourself. The same way we go for annual checkups. Purpose. Purpose to just have a way of unwinding in a way that is healthy. If it means you see a counselor, if it means you go for meditation, if it means you go for therapy, something that helps you grow and take care of your mental health and the health of the people that are in your organization, especially socialization too.
We believe prevention is better than cure. This applies to physical health and also applies to mental health. Prevention is way cheaper, it's easier on everybody, and in the long run, everybody is happier. Just the way we have prevention in physical health, we also have ways and means of prevention and promotion in mental health. Perhaps you're wondering, what are the top most conditions that I find when I deal with people at the level of the C-suite? And I think this would be important as my parting shot. One of the top 5 I find are what we call imposter syndrome. A lot of you are in positions that sometimes you feel like you're placed or you feel inadequate in as much as you're qualified for those positions. The syndrome called imposter syndrome, which time and chance allowing, we'll be able to unpack later. We see a lot of depression, a lot of anxiety, a lot of burnout. Burnout is a big one amongst the C-suite. It's a big one. It's something I deal with regularly. And finally, alcohol and substance use disorders. These are the commonest things that I encounter when I'm dealing with people at the C-suite. So just to congratulate you for taking your time to be part of this forum. It tells me that the leaders of this country and of this generation are taking their mental health seriously. And this gives me a lot of hope for the future of our young people if the leaders are leading from the front.
First and foremost, let us not approach mental health as patients. Let's approach it from the humanistic way, in which I mean by saying that we are able to cure our own problems, not that we are going to depend on somebody. As soon as you try to depend on anybody, you start having challenges. I know some of you maybe know, some of you don't know. I've faced some of the toughest things in life. I was a seminarian. I wanted to be a priest. 3 months to diaconate, I was kicked out from the seminary. I never saw myself as a patient. I saw myself as somebody who is able to deal with the issues, but you have to acknowledge those issues and walk the way. There's a time I was in headline news. The headline news was very clear that I was being accused of murder. I was in a cell for 21 days. Of course, I still acknowledge where my circumstances were, walked away quickly, easily, but of course, acknowledging what the challenges I had. So I'm saying, don't see yourself as a patient, see yourself as a human being capable of solving their issues. Even if you go before the psychiatrists, for example, like Dr. Njuguna and Dr. Eric, he will tell you it is the solution lies within your ability to make decisions which are required. So that is a humanistic view of how you deal with mental health. The other thing I want to say is that, as Dr. Erika said, I agree with him, you need to really work on prevention. And for me, I'll give you some recipe for that. One thing is, um, you should not cheat yourself to take an organizational job if you're a C-suite where the values that you own, that you hold dearly, are not incongruent with the values of that organization. For example, if you believe so much that you cannot work for a cigarette company like BAT, don't work there. If you believe that you cannot work for an organization that produces alcohol, you are too Christian for life, don't work for EABL. But if you believe that you cannot work for an organization that does something which is unethical, so the value congruence between the values that you all hold dearly and the values that organization hold dearly, most things comes that whenever there is a value incongruence, executives are more easy to succumb to pressure or stress. Where there is value congruence, even if the job becomes hard, it's easier to handle than where there is an incongruence. Lastly, some people take jobs they don't fit in and they try to play politics. And when politics come crashing on them, where they kick upwards and kick downwards to keep their positions, they find it so stressful and inhuman. Also, they crash and have some mental challenges. Take a job you fit. If there's a gap, train for gap. And HR can support you to have the right skills you want for this job, but don't pretend you're on top of the crowd. Those are my few remarks. So an honest person will know what they can and what they can't do and seek help. Thank you.
Mental and emotional health is important. And as an executive, you cannot take care of business if you don't take care of yourself. So invest in a culture of openness and psychological safety at work. Begin the conversation and welcome others to join you, even when it's awkward. Take a risk and visit a psychotherapist, even though it's out of curiosity. You never know. And also take some time for self reflection. Recognize when you begin to have dysfunctional coping habits and then put a cap on that earlier on before waiting until it's far gone. Thank you so much.
It's very, very important to dare to be vulnerable. Very, very important. And I think things are changing, the way how we approach meetings, how we approach our team members. Instead of just thinking about what are your deliverables, you have to start. It's a must start with check-in. How are you? And it's actually okay not to be okay. And encourage people not to say that they're okay if they're not. And then after that, you need to follow it up quite closely. And then in terms of actually ourselves, especially as leaders, and I was actually speaking from my own experience, because I had a mental issue, especially when I had COVID, and I actually had to seek support from a therapist. It's very important to be open, even with other leaders in the organization, instead actually of pretending that you're fine and you are powerful and you're strong, and you're not, and everybody can see that. So it's quite critical to think about that particular analogy of climbing the mountain, as somebody actually said. When you want to climb the mountain, and especially some of the highest mountains, then you've got to practice. And that is actually practiced through meditation. It's actually practiced through reflection, and even taking wellness breaks, even during the week. It doesn't have to be every day you are running, and doing rat race. That time is over completely. You cannot have a strategy, you cannot have a business if you don't take care of people. Thank you very much.
So when the law says give people 7 days with full pay, 7 days with half pay, are you going to terminate someone who has been working with you for this long because they are unwell, And sometimes, and especially with mental wellness, you can't pick the disease. Some people who have depression, people tend to think they're just being arrogant. And you hear people saying security may change sana, So until we get to realize that we are human, we are not robots, we are not equipment, and therefore we have to go beyond the law. The law might provide the minimum that is possible, but as the CEOs, as the leaders, as the HR people, let us just go a little bit and have a best practice where we actually take care of people's health. So we have OSHA, Occupational Health and Safety Act, that provides for safety at work. And I don't think I've seen anything to do with mental health. It talks about all other things to do with health, but ignores the mental wellness component. Even the most insurance companies, unless if it's something new that came with COVID, previously they would have so much on every other aspect of health apart from the mental wellness. And I want to imagine with COVID, because of the surge that we had with mental wellness, so much has changed, and therefore I can only imagine the future is brighter for this particular kind of space. But even with the law, it starts with our mindset. How are we treating people? Are we still spreading the stigma? Are we part of the problem or part of the solution? Back to you, Wahiga.
Starting 2020, we decided to onboard a clinical psychologist for our staff, so that anyone who had any mental health challenges could speak to them. And initially, when we started, we thought maybe there'll be stigma, or maybe a lot of staff would not be willing. But as of last year, we had 16 of our staff visit our clinical psychologist. And I think in terms of business, this has meant that the culture at the organization has changed. The work environment has changed. We've seen a positive impact on our staff. We've seen a positive impact in terms of how they engage among themselves. And most importantly, also their awareness of mental health. Jill mentioned about OSHA, and it's very interesting that even when we have our regular OSHA meetings with our staff, mental health has now become a key issue that our staff and as a company we're key on. So I can say, as organizations, we do not have to wait until we are compelled to by law. We have a moral duty to ensure that we provide the best care for our employees, because at the end of the day, we want our employees to be able to have a well-balanced life. If we are entrusting our people with valuable information, valuable decisions regarding the bottom line, it would only make sense, or it's only fair that we should also have an interest in their well-being. So I can say it has been an excellent experience, and I would advise any other executives out there, take the leap, embrace mental health as part of the things that you champion in an organization, and you can't go wrong.